The Red River Farm Network is celebrating the role of women in agriculture for our special series we call Agricult-HER. And of course, it's all made possible by our sponsors, the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council, along with the good folks from the Minnesota Corn Growers Association, North Dakota Corn Council, Ag Country Farm Credit Services, and Van On and Company. And very pleased to have with us Mary Buschette from the University of Minnesota, Director of Alumni and Constituent Relations at CFANS, the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences at the St. Paul campus. Mary, a treat to have a chance to visit with you.
Thanks, Don. It's a treat to be here with you, too.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. I look at Mary Buschette, and you are like the ultimate networker. I don't know anybody that has a network like you do as far as the connections you have. You've got this knack for bringing people together. Where did that come from?
That's a good question. I think that I would give credit to both of my parents. I was thinking about their roles in their community, and both of them were really engaged in civic service, but probably my dad even more so. You think about when you're growing up, on church on Sunday, the Buschette family was always the last to leave because Butch was talking with folks, and he, I guess I align with him in that way. I just love meeting people, and one of the things that people say is an important skill to have or remember is curiosity, and I genuinely love learning about people, so that makes it easy too.
Oh, you're such a pro at it. Let's get your origin story. You come from Southwest Minnesota. Take us back.
Well, I grew up on a farm before I started school. It was a dairy farm with, I think Dad had 12 or 13 cows and crops. And then when I started kindergarten, he sold the dairy and we just had livestock. And so it was natural to be involved with both 4-H and FFA. In high school, I remained involved with both, but really FFA, I would say, as a foundational organization and experience for my life. I was fortunate that when I was a freshman in high school, the national officer candidate was from my hometown, so I got to go to the national convention as a freshman. And that's how we connected, was through FFA back in the day. Following high school, I went to the university, thought I wanted to do something in business, and then as a state officer, I thought, well, maybe I wanted to teach. And so at the time, the National FFA had a study abroad program or work abroad program where for 6 months you could work on a farm, and there was financial support for it. And so I worked on a dairy farm, and it kind of backfired because I wanted to see more of the world and come back and teach high school. So spent almost 2 years, backpacked around the world, and came back to the U of M after that, and I've never left. So that's a big picture of the story.
Backpacked around the world. Tell me about where you went and really how you had the gumption to do that at such a young age.
Well, gumption or naivety, or I don't know what it was, or actually inspiration and role models. So as a student here at the university, when I came back from that experience in Germany, I was really curious to meet other people. And so I met the Germans that were here. If people don't know about the MASS program, it's a pretty terrific program. And I was just talking with some folks from the Northern Crops Institute about potential students working with them. So students come from around the world and spend 8 months, 12 months getting practical experience. And I got to know those students. And if they were coming from Europe, they were going to Australia, New Zealand, and back to home through Asia. If they were from Australia, they were backpacking around the world. People were like, all these math students were doing this traveling, and I thought, God, I want to do that too. And so I found a friend who graduated from the U with me, and we made a plan and had all of these masked contacts. Back in the day, Don, there was no cell phone. It was just letters. And so we sent like 75 letters to people we knew and said, hey, this is when we think we're going to be where you are. Can we come visit you? And so Janet and I left in November with a car to California, flew to Hawaii, 6 weeks in New Zealand, 2 months in Australia, a month in Thailand, a week in Hong Kong, 6 weeks by train, rail, train and water through China, Trans-Siberian across Russia, and then the rest of the time in Europe. And a really cool part of it is, when you get to meet people and see them in their natural setting or their home setting, how special that is. And one of my favorite memories was being in Zhengzhou, a city in China, and there was this Chinese math student. His name was Wei Wei. And at the time in the 1980s, the Chinese folks were wearing the blue or the green Mao type clothing. And we get off the train, and where's Wei Wei? Wei Wei. We're calling for him, and it was really crowded, and he found us, and here comes Wei Wei in his blue jeans and his red plaid shirt and his black jacket. It was like he had taken home his U.S. style to China, but it was really a terrific experience.
Those memories that you have from an experience like that, they last a lifetime.
Absolutely. And the relationships too.
It obviously whetted your taste for international travel. You've been, I think, traveling ever since, haven't you?
I have been. There was a dry spell when the kids were born, but we did have the chance to take them to Europe when they were 8 and 10, and kind of exciting. My daughter is studying abroad right now in Italy, and so we're looking forward to going to see her there.
Wow. Why would you encourage, I'm thinking of some of our young people, to get that international experience? For me anyway, it seems like it opens our eyes to see just how big this world is and still how small.
Oh, that's a terrific question. I think there's so many things that I want to say and how to get my mouth and my brain to work at the same time. I would say people are so similar, and sometimes we forget that, particularly when things are so chaotic as they are today. Sometimes we are pitted against each other, but people are so similar, and I think that it helped me. I remember coming back from that experience really understanding home better, because sometimes it's really good to get away from home. If that's getting away from Renville and coming to the Twin Cities, if that's getting ready from Minnesota and going to another state or going to another country, you get to see something from a different vantage point. And I think that you realize oftentimes there are no right or wrong answers. They're just sometimes just different answers. And so I feel like the relationships that I've been able to make, whether it's master international students here or being able to meet people while I'm traveling, it just enriches my life. And I'm a connector. I love making connections, and then sharing those connections with other people too is really fun. But I think you don't have to necessarily travel to benefit from that experience of getting to know people and learning about them and seeing yourself in your place a little differently.
Yeah, very good point. We kind of skipped a little bit of your state FFA experience. Like you said, that's when we first connected.
So I was one of those for those FFA members out there. I don't know that I knew that I wanted to be a state officer, but at the point that I did, I ran for office 3 times. And so that's a word for don't give up if it's something that you really want to do. And on the 3rd time, I was elected as state reporter. Hello, state reporters that are out there. It was another really great experience to get to know members of the team, travel around the state of Minnesota, interact with sponsors and supporters and leaders from the FFA. And I would like to, at this time, give a big shout out to all of the teachers out there. Whether you're an ag teacher or not, all of you teachers, thank you for what you're doing. If you're an ag teacher or an ag food and natural resources teacher, a special thank you. Thinking about relationships, there's a couple. If I start naming names, I won't get them all, but there are some teachers who were advisors when I was in high school and as a state officer that are still mentors and resources today. And so that's one of the reasons I say that FFA has been really formative in my life, because it has been a thread all the way through during my state office time, the opportunity to work abroad. And then I did get involved with the FFA alumni for a period of time, and also on the FFA Foundation. And so, and now I get to work with FFA here on campus when students are coming to visit. So that FFA state officer experience was really a valuable, enlightening educational opportunity.
Talk about teachers. I think back to your home chapter in Loyal Fisher and just really what
Yes.
kind of foundation he gave so many students.
He really did. There was a teacher before him, Mr. Wackles, and Mr. Wackles had a lot of state officers that came from Renville. And Mr. Wackles left when I was probably in 8th grade, so Mr. Fisher was my teacher. I was the last in a string of state officers from Renville, and a shout out to Natalie Beckendorf, who was the most recent state officer from Renville. But Mr. Fisher, he gave me and my friend Lynn Breitkreitz the opportunity to really to lead, to support, to challenge us. He he was a great teacher, and it was fun to keep in touch with him until he passed.
Yeah.
But he was a really special guy.
For a young reporter, he was a great person to work with as well. He was always just great personality, very optimistic. Now with the University of Minnesota, you're the biggest U of M supporter I know. Tell me about your current role.
I currently serve as the Director of Alumni and Constituent Relations in CFANS, which is a shorter way to say the College of Food, Ag, and Natural Resource Sciences. And I feel really fortunate to have this job because I get to work with those that have graduated from the university, the other end of the prospective students and current students. I learned a lot in the last couple of years being a co-advisor for the undergrad student board, the graduate student board, and the postdoc board, and learning a little bit more about higher ed and all of those stages. I knew a lot about being an undergrad, but now we have a lot of graduates from the graduate program that are making an impact in the world. The constituent relations side of my job is sort of back in the day, the dean changed the name because there are a lot of people who care about CFANS that didn't necessarily graduate from CFANS. They're constituents and supporters. So I love the opportunity to go to industry shows or to be a representative of the university and the college in places in addition to the alumni engagement. So when my kids were little, people would ask them what their mom did, and they'd say, she talks to people. And it's, I love to advocate on behalf of the U and help people make connections to the university, because sometimes the Twin Cities campus, Minneapolis and St. Paul, can be a daunting place. And so I welcome anybody if there's a question, to help point them in the right direction. So I feel like I'm a resource, a connector, an advocate, and I love my job.
I don't know if there's such a thing as a typical day, but what if there was one, what would it be?
Well, the typical days have been much more Zoom oriented since the pandemic than I would like to admit or like to experience. In fact, today when I was coming into campus, I called my colleague who we were supposed to have a Zoom meeting, and I said, can we just go to MIMS and meet in person? So it is definitely filled a lot with meetings, whether it's planning for events, whether it's meeting with student groups, going to events. No, there's not a typical day. And you know what's really kind of nice is, like being a farmer, I would say that my life in academia in alumni relations is very cyclical too. So when you're tired of planning events, then it's time to do something different. And so, but probably a typical day is meeting with people via Zoom or in person, and helping connections. It's really every day there's somebody, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me make this connection?
So I'm looking at those prospective students, and this is a series focused on women in agriculture. What do you tell them about the opportunities that are ahead?
Well, so many opportunities, unlimited opportunities. And I had an interesting conversation with a student once who was in another major and was thinking about ag communications and marketing. And she said, well, I don't come from a farm. I don't know if I'm going to fit in. And I'm here to tell everybody who's watching this, sometimes I told this student, sometimes that can be an advantage if you didn't grow up with that experience, because you will have perspectives that some of us who did will forget about. And I think that, the roles that I might have thought about when I graduated from high school that were available, how have they expanded today? Women can do anything and everything. And it is, I would say, here on campus, and I think in education, there are a lot of women who are leading the way. Guys, come on, get in here too. I know this is about women in agriculture, but let's get our guys to get involved too, because there are 60% of our student body today is women and 40% guys. But I don't think anyone should be daunted. If there's a passion that you have, if there's something you're interested in, go for it. And I think the other thing too is leverage your network. We all have networks. Some are bigger than others. But if you aren't sure, reach out and ask somebody. Give them a call. Ask them to have a meeting with you. Also this week, maybe once or twice a month, I'll get an email or a request, can I talk about your job, or can you help me figure out how I can do X, Y, or Z? And I love doing that. And I think there are others that do too, because, people like to talk about themselves. I don't mind talking about myself. And if it can help you, I want to do that. So don't be afraid.
You talk about that connection. We're so hung up on our screens and our phones and those kind of things. Having that, picking up the phone, talking to somebody, or that face to face, it's so important, and we're losing that to a degree somewhat.
I think so too. And sometimes you really need to make a conscious effort. So maybe a goal is just say X number of times this week, I'm going to switch this to an in-person meeting. It's kind of interesting. Like people will used to drop into people's houses, right? I think about my parents and my grandparents. Oh, we're going to go over to Olivia and see so-and-so. And you didn't call to say you were coming. You just kind of showed up. Now I feel like people have to make a connection before they even call to say, is it okay to reach out to you? I hope that that's something that will change in the future, but it is, so many people are saying today, let's meet in person because we get more done and there's more synergy and more energy. And I know that that's not always an option, but we need to do that, and it adds value and it adds joy.
So if you could go back to when you were just coming out of high school and you had to give yourself some look back, some advice today, what would you tell yourself?
Well, something I think that we as women are really good at is doubting ourselves, or we've all heard this, if there's an application that has 5 qualifications, oh, I'm missing one, I probably shouldn't apply. I'd say just do it. I'm going to tell you another little quick just do it story. One of my heroes is Norman Borlaug, and one of my other heroes is his daughter Jeannie, who I got to meet when Dr. Borlaug passed away and wasn't able to come to our homecoming event. And I had a chance to meet Dr. Borlaug when he was visiting campus, and I had this, like, what do you say to this person you admire? So my question was, Dr. Borlaug, what is your advice if you really want to make a difference in the world? And he looked at me and said, well, just do it. And I think still today, and sometimes we think about things, we question, we doubt, we're not sure. My word of advice to that younger me and to everyone else is just do it. Just take a chance. I think we worry too much about failure, and failure just makes us stronger for the next thing. So I'm thankful for the things that I did take a chance on. I wish, looking back, that I would have done more. And I hope that I will continue to take that advice myself now, going forward.
Norman Borlaug's a pretty great hero. I've had a chance to interview him a couple of times. I think once through you were able to make that connection when he was at the U one time. Who are some of those other heroes you have when you take a look at agriculture or just life in general?
Well, there is one person who is the voice of agriculture, Don Wick. Don Wick, you are, I'm not just saying that because we're here today, but you definitely are a hero in being a really approachable, great guy that finds ways to get people's stories out there. Other heroes, I thought about this a little bit, and there's so many. My parents, for, going back to that backpacker trip around the world, people said, how did your parents let you go? And I said, I think they were kind of shocked and didn't know what to say. And so I just went. But they certainly were role models and advocates for getting involved and making a difference. Mike Martin, who was the dean of the college, who took a chance on me back whenever I applied for this job. FFA. Kim Lippert, who was, I believe, was she the first state president or one of the first state presidents? Peg Zank, who was from Danube, who was my closest first female state officer that I really knew. And Don, there are so many in between. Val Arzerold, Doris Mold, Cheryl Meshke, and see, this is where I'll get in trouble, and a whole lot of you others that are out there, that Kristen Duncanson, Lori Stevermer, a lot of people, and I guess the thing that makes them heroes to me is that they just continue to advocate. They just keep going and making a positive difference in their circles.
Very cool. Well, you've been very gracious with your time. I always appreciate talking to you, Mary. Any final thoughts for us?
Well, I want to thank Red River Farm Network for taking this opportunity to celebrate women in agriculture, and just end with what I said before. If you're in doubt, just do it. So thank you so much for having the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you, Mary. Really appreciate it. Again, our chance to talk about women in agriculture. This is our special series we call Agriculture.